Make these tighter.
Tighter.
No, this is good.
Tighter.
I feel like they might fall off.
You do a backflip?
Never know.
Jeez.
Got to give the people what they want.
Hey everybody, welcome to Brick by Brick. I'm your host, Brad Crihfield. Thanks for joining us. I am incredibly excited today because in the studio I have my good friend Alex Argumedo, and I haven't seen you in forever, man.
It's been a long time. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we actually got this all set up so we can make this happen.
This entire setup is now worth all the work that went into it because it got you here. Because I mean, you don't even live that far.
No.
You're over in San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
But it's so weird. Like it's not really that far, but it really is hard to make time sometimes, right?
It is. I agree. And then if you got a lot of things going on, I mean, like you, congratulations. You're going to be running down here for the.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
all that self-development's starting to pay off.
Hey, right? That's all you can do is take it and use it.
Look at that. I'm a powerful, authentic, and loving man.
Yeah, there you go.
LP 70. What LP are they on now?
I believe they're in the 60s, 160 something.
160?
160, 161.
Team World, baby.
There you go, Team World. Exactly. That's a good point.
So we probably shouldn't do too many inside things because people are like, what are you even talking about? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the description you put up was great. It was former Army Ranger. Well, not former.
Oh, so you just gave me a whole bunch of...
Well, because I'm thinking in my mind, right? Like, that's what you wrote, and that's what I know people
Did I write that?
I think so. I think it said another thing, but
I think you wrote it.
I'm open to being wrong about that. How about that?
Wow, you really have grown.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, so I was an Army Ranger with 1st Ranger Battalion. I did 3 tours, all of them in Afghanistan, and then came back home with plans of going back in after I got my education. And while I was out, I was working, and then one of the places I decided to work for, they did the urine test and said, "Hey, we found something wrong." And that's when I found out I was going on like end-stage renal failure, so I had some kidney issues I had to take care of, and that kind of prevented me from going back. And then from there, I just threw myself into school. We did the leadership course together. I did that as well. And worked a lot. I mean, at one point I was working 3 different jobs. I was a commissioner in the city that I was in the City of Commerce. And I just kept myself busy. It's one of those things you kind of have to do. It was like, I really didn't have a plan. I wanted to be a Ranger like forever until I had to retire. And then, life kind of happens and I had to make adjustments. So I was still trying to figure out what I was doing, but I was like, hey, my grandfather told me, like, if you don't know what you're doing, be in school, get educated. Right. So I was doing that and making plans for the future. And then now, I'm in San Diego now. I have a small, it's not active anymore because I took a position with a company that's out of San Francisco. So I work from home, but I had my own little small business doing consulting for fire sprinklers. And, right now that's what I do now. And then I think that's really about it. I'm sure I'm leaving some things out, but we'll get there.
Yeah. So how long were you in the Army for?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
And do you miss it?
Every day.
Yeah.
Best job I ever had.
Yeah. Do you still keep in contact with a lot of people you served with?
Definitely. Yeah. And the cool thing about being a Ranger is like, even the Rangers that I run into now, there's a lot of guys that I keep in touch with from new groups that I've met either through Gallant Few or even other military combat veterans that I've met through Mike Toledo. He has this organization in Hawthorne called HUA. It's Wounded Heroes of America.
Yeah.
And so through those guys and, people that I've worked with on bike rides, I did that bike ride from San Francisco to Santa Monica with Ride to Recovery, so I've been active with a lot of different veteran organizations that help out veterans, a lot of it adjusting to either injuries or just adjusting back to civilian life, things like that.
So speaking of injuries, what caused the kidney stuff, do you know?
So when I filed my claim, they were really big on telling me that it was like something that I had to prove first. And I think that's something that's still kind of going on right now with the VA. But short of like going over there and kind of figuring out what I think it was, whether it was the time we got sick from, drinking the water and eating the food, or whether it was from, being out there in the environment and having things, blown up around us and whatever was being tossed up from the ground, a lot of the old artillery that was buried in the ground and things like that. So, short of being over there and taking soil samples and testing out, like I'm not a scientist. All I can say is that when I went in, I had a clean bill of health. And then when I got out, shortly after I got out, I had this illness, and it was attacking my kidneys. And if it wasn't for my mom who gave me her kidney, I don't know where I'd be. I was already on dialysis. And
did you ask me for a kidney at one point?
Yeah, I remember that time behind the store. I was like, hey, bro.
Yeah, I thought you were joking.
No, I think during the time we were going through the leadership course together, I had let people know this was happening, and I was like, if you want to get tested, if it's something you're interested in doing, and surprisingly, a lot of people...
You did ask me for a kidney.
I didn't personally ask you. I said, hey, if you're interested in doing something great...
It just got really awkward. I just totally forgot. I told you couldn't have my kidney.
I think I said...
I'll be honest, I thought...
I think it started, it was like, you don't need two, right?
Yeah. No. Oh, no, I didn't know that. But I think I got the kidney and liver mixed up. I was like, nah, dude, because I don't want to not be able to drink.
Right, yeah.
No, but now, dude, if I would have known what I know now.
Oh, right, now, yeah.
I mean, do you still need it?
Well, yeah, I might. Never know.
Well,
I'm going to put you back on the list. We'll figure it out.
But you're better now.
Yeah, I'm better now. And I think we were talking earlier about the diet changes I've made, and they've seemed to have helped, so I'm sticking with them.
You're a vegan now.
No, I'm not a vegan. So my wife is vegetarian.
Because first rule of being a vegan is you got to tell everybody you're a vegan.
I think that is a rule, but I'm not there yet, so I'm not advertising. No, my wife's a vegetarian, and she's made that kind of lifestyle change. I'm not 100% vegetarian, but I've definitely changed my diet to eat a lot more
that's
vegetables.
A good thing, man. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, I mean that's a really good. Dude, I'll be honest. I'm gonna take off this jacket.
Yeah, go right.
So Alex came in and he totally outdressed me, so I just couldn't have that happen. So I put on a coat, and now I'm like sitting here sweating, and I'm it's not worth all that. So you're gonna outdress me today.
You got it. Oh, look, he's got all the biceps going for him, and he's definitely
stuck.
Yeah. I see you worked me out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you're a vegetarian.
You know what? I really commend her, because it's difficult to remain a vegetarian, and not, especially in San Diego. Like, gosh, there's so much good food out there, and I definitely take advantage when I can. But no, I think just changing it to where I was doing more of an 80-20, majority vegetable base, and then on occasion I'll have certain meats or chicken, fish, things like that. Mostly chicken or fish.
I think you kind of lose the taste for it a little bit, right? No?
Oh man, no.
No.
I mean, I know some people probably do, and maybe that's like after a few years or things like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can go like 6 months and still be like, man, I want a good steak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I only do grass-fed, like when I do eat meat, but it's expensive.
It is expensive. You're right.
And it's hard to tell, like when everything becomes like grass-fed and like they're all doing that, it's hard to tell like if is it really that quality?
You see it, right? Like you see all of a sudden you see your normal Kroger brand, and now it's like, open fields, grass-fed. You're like, is it, or is it just coming on the same truck? I don't know, So,
but you feel better when you stick to that
actually, if it was a feel better thing, it might be a little like just something in my head. But no, I got tested now 3 times. I go and see the nephrologist, and they take my blood and urine samples, and things have gotten better. The creatinine levels have dropped, like everything's gotten better. So it's actually working.
You were on dialysis there for a while?
I was on dialysis for a while. I was doing peritoneal dialysis, and wasn't doing too well. But even then I was on a strict diet. I think just dialysis is just a short-term fix, and especially peritoneal, it's different from hemo.
Yeah.
So
So you're cutting weight, huh?
Not cutting weight. I think with everything going on, I've kind of, the CrossFit gym closed. I know you have your opinions about that.
No, I'm good with CrossFit. It's all good.
But the whole thing is, it's been difficult to really get out and work out as much as I used to. So, I was eating a lot, and Estelle, my wife's gotten into baking bread. So having fresh
Who's
bread.
actually helping us today.
Yeah, she is.
She's our
and
assistant.
I think she's doing a great job.
Yeah.
She's,
yeah. I need to add another camera to like face you, so everyone can see her.
Yeah.
But thanks for the help today. It's really awesome.
Yeah, so I was mentioning to you earlier, I'm like trying to drop weight quickly, kind of like when we did the sub fighter.
Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, but you know what? It was a big thing, and I'm glad we kind of organically went down this road, because that was a big event for me. I wanted to thank you for that, because I mean, I was in a rough spot.
That was your...
I had that tube coming out of me.
Right.
Remember? And it was like, I didn't know if I should do the competition.
Right.
And I don't know if you were digging deep inside somewhere and it came from a good place, but you kind of just slapped me on the back and you were like, man up, dude. And I was like, all right. And I just put that thing.
No, I was probably being grossly irresponsible. I mean...
wow. It was great. It was probably the greatest feeling I had.
I'll take it.
Yeah, man. It was the greatest feeling I had. I wrapped that tube up and secured it tightly, and we went and did that competition, and I only had a month to train up for it, and I did well. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm of course I'm gonna say I did well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really did. I didn't have the cardio.
You're scrappy.
Well, yeah, it turned out well, and I was happy to do it. And I don't know, it just made me feel a lot better about my circumstances. So yeah.
It's amazing what that does. The fighting, even competing. I did another tournament last year, and I won that one. And there's something just very primal about that,
right.
And you probably get that out of CrossFit,
Well, and kind of like if you're into jiu-jitsu, or with you doing the fight and everything, which, by the way, nice belt. That is amazing.
Thanks.
Congrats.
Yeah, it goes with these shoes I got. So.
But the idea is the community's good, and even with everything going on in the climate of everything that's happening in the world right now, like CrossFit and jiu-jitsu and gyms like that, you really don't see anything that the news or anything is trying to portray. It's like, hey, ability at any level and people trying at any level, everybody's welcome, and it's so nice. Like, you never really, none of the things that you would think are an issue are never an issue. You're never looking at people's, whether it's women, men, is this what race, none of that. It's just like, hey, people are getting in there and getting the job done, and they're not necessarily lifting the most or doing anything, but man, to watch them overcome certain things, and you're there with them, and you watch them drop weight, get stronger, lift heavier. I mean, just community like that is good to have in your life, to kind of balance out the negative that you see every day versus the reality of how much people really are looking out for each other. You know what I mean? It's amazing.
And there's a great community, and there's also a great, it's a great source of mentorship and and just guidance. In that way, sometimes you have a coach that can even give more guidance on a even personal level when you really work with them. But especially for young people that are going through when they're late teens or out of high school, or even early 20s, where just being around other people that are being active, and you're seeing them regularly. There's a sense of accountability, and there's a sense of just camaraderie.
Right.
That's really good, especially for people that never got an experience where maybe camaraderie and teamwork is a big part of what you do. Yeah. Some of these people that's the most that they'll get of that. Yeah. So it can be a very positive thing. My coach, who's been Tracy, you've met Tracy.
I've met Tracy, yeah.
He's been my coach since I was 18, and the only coach I've ever had, really. Yeah. And he's just amazing mentor to me and helped me out through some really tough times. I remember one time me and he broke up. We just started dating. Right. It was like we were like 4 months into it, 5 months maybe. Man, he broke up with me, and I called him crying like a baby, just snot and just going to town. And he just helped me through it. Yeah. And helped me get a level head, and then we ended up working it out, and now we have 2 amazing kids, and everything's great, and we're 11 years into it. But I think about things like that, where sometimes a conversation can just be a conversation. Sometimes it could be life-changing. And sometimes when you have somebody who can support you through really difficult times, that could dramatically shift the direction or trajectory that you're going. The same person could have gave me really bad advice and he's like, forget her and go this way. Rather than just listening and hearing that you want to resolve things. So, I mean, just the mentorship aspect's really important.
For sure.
And what do you get out of CrossFit? Other than you get some Kool-Aid once a week or something, right? Then you get this tattoo.
No, I think, and I haven't been as active as I was for a while. I tore my, and not during CrossFit either. People make this mistake.
Sure.
I wasn't doing it for a while, and I started doing Olympic lifting, which was even more up my alley, just because the visceral experience of lifting heavy and tossing weight around was so cool. And I was getting to a point where, for my size, I was putting up a decent amount of weight. I was happy with it. And but I had other guys there that were putting up, substantially more. So I was working towards it. I felt confident about it, but I tore my patellar tendon. So I had to take some time off, and it wasn't necessarily from that. I think it was a combination of not stretching. Like, you kind of miss that window where you're like, hey, I think you're a little too old to just be going in cold to stuff.
Yeah.
But your mind and your body need to catch up sometimes. And I think living that Ranger life and everything was like, go, 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 attack, attack, attack. And I just wasn't being responsible with my body. So I had done a long run the night before. I didn't get the sleep I should have. I wasn't eating properly. I went and did this whole box jump, routine up and down, which is a lot of stress already. And then I went and I started lifting heavy, and I actually went too heavy. I didn't work my way gradually up. I was like, I'm warm. I'm just going to go for it. And I almost made it. I was doing everything. And then I tried to set a PR, and I went pretty heavy, and I just felt something weird happen. And I dropped the weight, and nothing initially. I just walked around. I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm fine. Didn't stretch, didn't do anything. And then the next morning I woke up and my knee was swollen, and I was like, damn it.
How long ago was that?
Oh, I think it was maybe a year ago. I'd have to check.
Yeah.
Maybe a little over a year ago. But yeah, I had to wear a brace. I did everything, and I got lucky. I didn't tear it completely. I just tore it 50%, and I thought I was going to have surgery on it. And fortunately it healed.
Nice.
I kept the movement down. It healed, and then that kept me out for a little bit longer. And I was just doing band work, pull-ups, little things. So right when I was ready to come back, I think I went for maybe about a month, and then, the whole COVID.
Is that still a thing?
I don't know. It's difficult, right? Yeah, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. I don't want to be obtuse about the whole thing. It's a thing, but I just, man, if we could get some, some real direction on what's happening, that'd be nice.
That'd be nice. Maybe some consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think that's where people get really split on that, right? Because it's really has to do with trust in the media than anything else. And people get mad at other people for having different points of view, when really we're all getting the information from the same general basic places. And the fact is there's just no accountability and trust in the media, which makes people come up with these really different conclusions, which makes it all much more divided.
Well, we're living in I don't want to sound like I know it all, so
you're gonna sound that way.
We're just living in a strange time, and I think we're all accommodating or trying to accommodate social media.
We're all just trying to figure it out, man.
We are, but I think the issue that I want to kind of get to is that we're here now. We might disagree about a few things. I don't know.
Hell yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe. But the idea is that you're still my friend. We talk to each other with respect. I respect you. I respect people just genuinely who I am. If I meet you on the street, I'm going to come off respecting you first until you give me a reason not to.
Right.
But a lot of the dialogue that's going on right now, and which is why I kind of deleted my Facebook app, except to kind of let people know that I'm going to be on here, which is because it's this thing that someone comes out and just tells you, you see some meme and they put it on there, and they're kind of poking fun and laughing, and they're thinking that that's going to somehow enroll you into their way of thinking. Or they're going to come out already and kind of just say, hey, you're an idiot if you don't, whatever it is. And it's, a lot of people, a lot of sides are guilty of doing that. And the reality is it's deeper than that. You got to look at okay, this guy is an athlete. He works out. He's taking good care of himself. He washes his hands. He's working out at the park by himself. He might be doing well. He might want to go get something to eat. Maybe he did everything. And it's just kind of, the narrative now that COVID's political. Is it really? I mean, is it? It shouldn't be. It should just be hey, do what's responsible for you. If people feel uncomfortable around you, chances are most people are going to be hey, if you're uncomfortable, I'll wear a mask. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think once it starts becoming this automatic, hey, you're stupid for not wearing that. Or
well, it's hard because what you're saying is on the one-on-one basis, yes, it's just a person, and most people are just yeah, well, do you want me to put a mask on, take it off, whatever. But when it comes to making a policy for everybody, it becomes very, you're never going to make everyone happy. But at the end of the day, there's things that are for the public health.
Right.
But it kind of goes to what I was saying in the beginning, where you start to question what is for public health and what is political warfare.
Right.
And how much is this not a statement of what is best for people, but more of, just politics.
Right. And the reality is you kind of see the media driving that narrative. You know what I mean? And it's disappointing to kind of see that there's a narrative out there that, and this is just one example of what I've seen. I think you're familiar with it. Hey, you can go and protest and that won't affect COVID at all.
That's a tough one.
And that is a tough one. I mean,
because it's the same people.
Right.
It's the same people
Right.
that are willing to tell their own family members how idiotic they are
Right.
for going to a restaurant are the same ones who went to a protest last week.
Or don't work out and keep yourself fit and healthy
Yeah.
for this virus that's out there, but you can go out and do, this kind of thing in mass groups and yell in some cases, not in all, in some cases, and yell in people's faces, at police officers' faces. And it's like, we all know that that's not right, but there isn't, and I think it just takes away credibility from a lot of people. And the people that suffer really are people that are in the middle, right? You have these fringe people on the right and the left, and then everybody in the middle just trying to make it all work, you know? And it's like, you guys aren't helping.
Yeah.
But, and you see that a lot too, right? You see this small percentage of people kind of running things, and you're like, dude, it shouldn't be that way.
Well, it's the if it bleeds, it leads, format of media where they're just pointing out, the far extremes, and then people will click and the money comes in. But, a good example is that couple that were on their porch with their guns.
Right.
And it was, I'll be honest, man, sometimes I feel like it's just people don't realize how bad it looks. You got this guy in khakis and a pink polo.
Oh man, that guy was like straight out of Miami Vice.
Right?
I was like,
standing in
that.
front of his mansion.
Yeah.
It's just like, it makes it so hard to see like the actual stance or the argument that brings to the forefront, the conversation that could start of like, what, there's legal and there's illegal. And then there's, the right to protect yourself on your own property. But when you have a guy in a pink polo and khakis, like, dude, you are not the guy who's really going to make that case.
Yeah. And there's a couple of ways to look at that, right? Like one of them clearly is, was he doing anything illegal?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Oh.
And so, that's a few things to be mindful of. The other thing, if you're trying to go like,
but then you have the mayor there.
Yeah,
she's going to investigate and use the full force of the law. What seems like a huge overreach, like unless there was a crime committed.
Right, and there wasn't. The crime that was committed was private property. Now,
well, she was saying it was assault on the protesters, right? Intimidation.
It's hard, right? Because inside, man, there's so much to unpackage here. But let's just start step by step. Was there a law broken? Yes, it was crossing private property and doing that. So, I mean, and these are just things that shouldn't be arguable. Like, that's what it was. You might not agree with the law. It might be a punitive type thing, like, private property. But the hard part, too, is now going back to the media and the responsibility of the media, right? You can't help but look and notice how these things get out of control quickly. So if it was out here, I can't help but say, if we were here right now and there was something going on, I'd be a little concerned. I'd be concerned. It would ramp up. Do I have a right to be? I don't know, but I know that through the media, you've kind of seen these things turn into things they shouldn't.
Right.
I don't know what causes that, but it's kind of been the narrative they're pushing. I'm sure there's been several, Black Lives Matter protests that were super peaceful and didn't go off.
For sure.
But the ones that we've been seeing lately start off that way and end in riots.
Right.
Start off that way and someone gets injured, someone gets hurt. So I can't blame them for feeling, especially because of the things that have been said from one side, eat the rich has been something I've heard them chant. Yeah. And so it's like, they're obviously in a mansion, and I think they were trying to be preventative by coming out there and say, we're armed, so don't attack our home.
And exactly. And it's not, some people will see, brandishing a firearm as you're antagonizing and you're creating the problem where you're going out to shoot people. A lot of times it's to prevent anybody from getting hurt. Like it's a defensive measure of saying, don't do this.
Right.
Like, don't come to our house, don't come in.
Right.
And again, like, I don't think that was a smart move. I think really when you have a group that size, what are you really doing? Yeah. To an extent, but if their intention was to go out and shoot people, it's not a good way. Like, you're gonna get overrun for sure. But in a defensive posture, obviously it served the purpose. But the media immediately branded them as like the most racist, evil, Trump people, and then you find out
that they're not even
that they're lifelong Democrats. The guy
they're civil rights attorneys is what I heard.
Yeah,
and I'm like, wow, you know what I mean? So and that goes to another thing. It's like let's just for a second step away from this, and it's like I know I've had some in-depth, maybe even heated discussions with people that felt a certain way about guns, but some of those same people were quick to call me as soon as this all went off and asked me about getting a gun or borrowing a gun. I'm like, that's illegal.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that.
You're not allowed to do that. Yeah. So, and I'm not coming down on anyone. I get it. Like there are things I may not know either. And I know they weren't saying that because they thought, I would tweak the law or anything. They just weren't informed. But that's an important thing, right? And I think that's something, I wrote something down because it was important to me. I thought about it the other day, and I don't know if I got it from somewhere, but it came to my mind, and it was, what did I say?
You can't read your own writing.
I can't. That's terrible, right? Yeah, it was like something that there's a narrative, that's going out there about, I don't know. I'll come back to it later. I can't read my writing.
It's upside down.
No, but the idea was that like right now it's more important to have a view than have the knowledge of the view, of the point of view, of where other people are coming from. And I thought that was, impactful for me because I'm like, it's true. Like, it shouldn't be that important to just have a view on something without any experience, without any knowledge, and then just go out there out on a limb, right, and start attacking people. It's like, whoa, like take it easy.
Well, I do find oftentimes it's the people that know the least that speak the loudest, and it does create it does make it very, it pushes the other side further. But it's difficult because there's a huge chunk in the middle that don't care to get involved in those arguments. Right. And most people, I think, agree on 90% of the stuff. Like I really believe that. I've had great conversations with people that you would consider very, very left, and I've had great conversations with people that you'd consider very right. 90% of the stuff we're talking about we agree on with both parties. The only thing that really differs is what your solutions are to those problems, and that's okay. Like that's where like collaboration and working with a group works, because you're solving problems together. The problem is that everybody wants to have the right answer to solve the problem, right? But we're agreeing on what the problem is. It's just the solutions are different. So we pretend like the other person's evil because they don't agree on your solution, and it's crazy. Like it's so, people are so fast to cast the other person as wrong or evil and claiming the moral high ground on everything, or the constitutional high ground.
And I'll give you a good example, like kind of what I came to realize, and a big reason why I kind of deleted the Facebook app. And I was like, now if I have to go on, I got to go do it this extra way, which is because it's not the right platform, right? And my thought process about it was, the moment I'm jumping into point out something or make a conversation about something, it's too hard to have a vulnerable conversation with somebody on that platform, because you're automatically now trying to make someone wrong. Right. And they're trying to make you wrong, or you're trying to be right and they're trying to be right. And the only reason that exists on that platform is because you've got outside people watching the comments. Right. Oh, can I get a thumbs up for me calling this guy a racist? Like, and so it's just like, that's not the conversation. And what I've been doing is I've been pointing out like, and it was interesting. I pointed out to a friend, she had posted something about Trump and Hitler, which is a strange, in itself to make that comparison, but I get it. If you're going to go full evil to make someone evil, you got to do that.
Got to go hard on the paint.
Got to go do it, Yep. So I was like, I got it. But it turned out, like I pointed out, I'm like, hey, and I hate having to defend him, but I also hate that.
But you also get put in, anytime you make any argument right of left, it becomes about him. And then you end up in this position where you're forced to defend in order to get to your next point, or to point anything out. You have to get through that barrier. Right. And it's a hard way to communicate. Yeah. And I just pointed out to her, I was like, hey, he didn't say that. I looked it up. You posted it first, but I looked it up and he didn't say that. And it's kind of like you're being negligent. Like your responsibility here is to either correct it or whatever. And her response to me was like,
well, he seems like he would have said that.
It doesn't matter if he said it or not.
Yeah,
that's what he believes.
Right. And I'm going like, that's not what he believes. And like, I just wish people had more faith in our country and how far we've come. I'm like, man, you know, by taking this road and saying nothing's changed, or, you know, we're totally racist, you're like really taking a big crap on people like Martin Luther King, on people like Frederick Douglass, on these, you know, on these individuals that have made this change, all the people involved in the civil rights movement. You're basically telling them you didn't do crap and we're still a racist place. And I'm like, it's not. It's just not. That's just not been my experience. Maybe I've been fortunate. I don't know. Maybe, you know, I mean, I don't know. I've kind of grown up in the projects. We've worked our way through, you know, out of the projects and into, you know, a nice area. But like, I don't know. You see a little bit of everything.
Did you grow up in the projects?
Yeah, for a little while. I was very young
like
when we were there.
8?
Well, my grandmother lived there for a while, and you know, I went to school in at this school, Santa Teresita, and it was right across the street from.
I don't speak French.
It's Spanish. No, but it was right across the street from the Motor Garden projects, and so in order to get to my grandmother's, she would watch us. I'd have to walk home from school, which is interesting. If you have to cross the projects in a uniform, in a school uniform, because it was a Catholic school.
You learn to run pretty fast.
You learn to run really quick, or you learn to fight, and sometimes you have to do both. You know, so it was one of those things. And my father and my mother were really good. They were vigilant about not letting us be a part of a gang. You know, so it was even tougher, right?
And yet here you are joining cult after cult.
Well, you know, it's a healthy. Yeah. So I don't know. That's the big thing from it all. And I haven't seen a lot of that, but I would encourage people, right? Like when I was looking at what was going on.
Do you think having the like the experience of being raised in a environment like the projects or Section 8 housing or low income housing, whatever, does that change your perspective on issues?
I think it does. Actually, I know it does. It just does. It changes a lot of things that you see. And a lot of it not in the way that most people would think. Like, I get how you can feel destitute in some of those situations, right? You're like, I'm stuck. Who's going to do it? But like, we made it out. And so I have a different view of looking at it. Like, it wasn't easy. I got bullied a lot for being the nerd, for doing my homework,
I can see it.
Yeah. But that's something that we don't talk about, right? Like, it's like, I didn't get out because I got lucky or because I'm white.
Right.
Like, I did a lot of the right things early.
Right.
And then I carried them over. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I mean, shoot, you know, I had a lot of good, loyal friends that were doing the wrong things. They're still my friends.
Yeah.
And they were still very loyal and they looked out for me. But for whatever reason, that's what they were doing, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, hey, I can't follow you to that road, but, you know, we can still keep that friendship. And I never even thought that I would have to like point that out, that, you know, there's ways, you know, that's what makes this country great. There's ways to improve your situation. I mean, a lot of immigrants will tell you that, you know, a lot of people that have come from socialist, you know, countries, from communist areas. I mean, there's a reason why people are literally dying to get into, you know, America. And it's because it's still, even with all its faults, it's not perfect. It is the greatest place to really make a difference for yourself and your family, whether it's your immediate family or your future family, but you can make that difference, and people do it all the time, you know, and you just got to make those right decisions and be aware of some of the wrong ones that you got involved in and take accountability. That's something you and I have learned even through the leadership, right? Like, which is amazing that some of the same people in that group haven't seen that side of the accountability side, right? Like, you've got to own up to what you've done.
Accountability, all of those concepts are so heavy.
They are heavy.
Because if you say, you know, take responsibility for your life, it's like almost like just by saying that you're dismissing injustices and you're dismissing the on level the playing field. But even so, I was gonna ask you something before that. So like, you would consider yourself patriotic?
Definitely, yeah.
Right? Were you patriotic before you joined service? And being in the service, you know, how did that change your views?
So, yeah, you know, my family, my grandfather was in World War II. He was there in the Navy and the Army. And probably, man, get choked up, but I mean, he's passed, but he was probably the hugest influence in developing my character from a young kid, like watching him. And then my uncles were Marines, you know, and I looked up to them. Like, my grandmother has pictures. I'm sure, you know, most grandmothers have pictures of the whole family, you know, up. And I'd pass by and just look at them and just see them so stoic. And, you know, it was like, man, you know, they're awesome.
Now your grandkids are going to go by the wall and like, there's just going to be like selfies.
Yeah.
You know? It's like not very stoic.
Not very stoic at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, I grew up in that. And, you know, I was very patriotic about that. You know, my father was a Golden Gloves champion. He was slotted to go to the 1984 Olympics, you know, and, you know, I came along and kind of put a damper on that dream. But you know what I mean? Like, we've just, you know, I guess what I could say is I'm fortunate. I have a mother and father, and both of them really worked really hard to kind of get us out of the situation we're in. And they kind of instilled in me early. I didn't even have a choice to make a decision whether or not I wanted to feel sorry for myself. They were kind of like, look, you're going to work hard and you're going to make something of yourself. And, you know, that goes a long way, you know, recognizing little by little as you chip away at things and you do become accountability, it becomes less offensive, right? You're like, oh yeah, I get it. You know,
because accountability isn't just about you.
It's really not.
So for me, accountability is about me first, because I have to put myself in a position in order to be accountable for my community. Mm-hmm. So being accountable for what's going on around you. And I see things, and it's almost better to just be overly accountable. Or what does Jocko Willink say?
Love Jocko.
Extreme ownership.
Ownership.
So I try to practice that as much as I can, where even if it's irrational, I say, how did I do that? Like what did I do? Who was I being in order to let that happen? And who do I have to be in order for that to not happen next time?
Well, and I have a lot of the reason I feel the way I do is just because I've seen it in my life. So I've had a lot of restarts in my life for several different things, right? It's like, went to the military and, you know, not ashamed to say it, I came back and there was a lot of things I wasn't prepared for, and I was suffering from PTSD and trying to figure my way out. And in 2004, schools and everything wasn't set up for that, you know? Like, I say this story and it's crazy. It's like I packed up all my stuff, got out of the military, and it was like still fresh in my head, like just things that had just happened. It was like I was crazy. There, and then I was here, and then they let me out. And now there's protocol.
Was there any transition
nothing
programs?
There was nothing.
So you literally went from
just overseas, came back, packed my stuff up, and I left. And it was like, you know, the boys took care of me. They threw together a big party, and, you know, we hung out, and I still saw them because I was still lingering around trying to figure out what I was going to do. But, you know, now they've got that down. And now guys have like a psych eval, and there's, you know, they go through a process, and it's good. And it took a little bit of time. I'm not attacking anybody for that. You know, it just happened and we weren't prepared for it. Should they have been? I guess maybe. But, you know, I'm not attacking anybody for that. I left home. I came home and I went from extreme ownership, being in charge of all these guys doing, you know, really like advanced things for what we were doing over there, to living in a garage. Yeah. My then wife was divorcing me. I hadn't seen my son, and I was trying to make everything work. And I mean, you know, without sounding too disgruntled, you know, our system right now, you know, for divorce and, you know, getting to see your kids and stuff is so one-sided. And I'm not blaming anybody, but, you know, it's so one-sided. Here she was involved with drugs, had been through rehab, and she was immediately awarded, you know, custody of my son. And I had to fight for every ounce, and it was a fight.
Why do you think that is?
I will say that I'm sure that, you know, before things were set up that way, there was a huge struggle for women to, you know, fight that. And I know that probably goes way back before my time, but it was probably something that back in the day when the men owned the home and had everything, you know, it was probably, there had to be laws for that, right? There had to be laws to help women out to do that. So I'm not looking at it in a negative light. I'm just saying that it's one of those things that I wish, and when the time comes, I'd like to champion some change, because there's a lot of good fathers out there, and the way it, like, even trying to overcome the debt that accrued from, you know, being off of work because of my transplant and trying to rehab, and when I got sick and caught a cytomegalovirus and lost like 50 pounds like instantly and had to recover, you know, all of those things. It's like, yeah, it wasn't working. I was rehabbing, I was trying, but that doesn't stop. And then you come out of this battle for 2 years and you're like, all right, I'm ready to go get things done. And it's like, oh, by the way, plus interest on this, which was, something that was probably owed 10,000 is now 30,000.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, now you understand, there's how guys become these deadbeat dads. If you don't have extreme ownership, despite the causes, right? Whether I'm right or wrong, it's extreme ownership. Now I'm responsible for that. What am I going to do? Do I roll over and die because I feel like I got a bad deal? No, you've got to make it work. You've got to still have dreams. You got to push through it. And, that's kind of how I look at everything. So it's not really any indoctrination into any type of political thing. It's just my life. It was like how I had to live it. I could have laid down and died and just been like, oh, I'm not going to get a job, live off the books and not do anything, and life screwed me. Or am I going to take it and be like, what can I do? How am I going to do that? Great, there's an obstacle. How do I overcome it? And so, you go from living in a garage to eventually I moved up, I got work, I was doing what I had to do. And then it was like, boom, another injury related to my illness. I've got to go back into surgery. Lost my job for it, and it was like, okay, what am I going to do? Get another job, working, still recovering. And like, the recession hits, right? Boom, construction takes a hard hit. I'm out. Deplete my 401k again to take care of what I have got going through, kind of making things work here and there, scrounging around, and then boom, get back into it, talk to people, make things happen. Bam, now I'm in San Diego getting things done. So, I've had to restart my life a few times, but I don't feel bitter about it. It's kind of, and I'm sure you'll agree too, because I know you've probably had to do the same. Life just deals you some things that are difficult, and you've got to make it work, man. You've got people relying on you, people depending on you, and you got to dig deep and make it work and make it happen. And I don't know.
I definitely see life in chapters, and I'm always excited to get to, without taking away from the current chapter. I'm always excited to start the next one.
Right.
But I feel like looking back, I just have to be able to learn something from each chapter, and build upon my own character and my own story. There's only a few things that I've really heard at exactly the right time where they really stick with me. And one of those things was somebody was saying, if your life was a book, would you bother to read it? Would it be a good enough read? And I think that's an aim to have at the end of life. If it was in a book, would it be worth reading?
Right. And
I think that's really important. And like any book, it can't just have a good ending. You can't just be like, well, I'll get to the good stuff later. Chapter 9, 10, and 11 are going to be great, but no one's going to get that far in the book. So it's really important to say, okay, regardless of my situation, this chapter, what's interesting? Where's the story arc? Where's the part where, you get knocked down and you get back up? Where's the romance? Where's the comedy? Where's the tragedy? Where, like, life isn't just about getting through without any scars. It's about, getting.
Let's be cool. Scars are cool, man.
Scars are cool. But you have to put, oftentimes, those scars it means that you put yourself in a position to risk and to live. So that's how I see it. For me, like the first few chapters is I grew up in the projects. I grew up in Section 8 housing, and I learned a lot there. And I learned a lot about what you were talking about with fathers in particular, and how they're seen in the system, and how they're very disposable from a system. And when the government replaces the father, I could rant about that, but it goes same thing with divorce, where the father really does become disposable, and then the government steps in as the father role, and that's how we get a lot of mistrust.
And just exploring that one thing today, if that's all anybody walks away from, or if we just explore that thing, it's such a huge impact. If you don't have that mentorship, like you said, if you don't have that father figure teaching you what it's, what it means to be a man, not these movies, not Rambo, not all that, but what does it mean to be a man?
And that helps.
Have that humility, be able to take it on the chin with some of these things, living your life in a way where you're like looking out for others, taking care of people, being part of your community. Those kind of things need to be instilled in you, and you need to get it from someone that you look up to.
Right. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a man. It doesn't have to be your dad. It doesn't have
Right.
to be your uncle.
It can be anyone.
It's somebody that cares and somebody in the community. That's where, mentorship programs really come in. That's where, being a part of team sports comes in. That's where having good teachers is important. Good, just good people in your community. But you have to have a certain level of trust in your community to allow your kids to be exposed to that.
Well,
but now more and more families are living within their walls, and your kids aren't going out in the street to play with the neighbors. It's just people's worlds are becoming so isolated,
mm-hmm.
and you can see it more and more, and it's reflective in social media where it's almost like you're not even talking to your community anymore. You're just colliding with everybody else.
Well, and this is a big thing, and I'm glad you brought it up too, because one of the most powerful things, my family's not perfect. We are not. We may not have all lived the same life. I've had cousins that have trouble with the law. I've got some cousins are doing really well, some aren't doing so well, aunts, uncles, whatever. There's a whole gambit. But the reality is this, and it's something cool. And I don't know if it's just cultural within Mexican families, but like no matter what, we might disagree on stuff like politics or whatever, but no one's messing with my family. No one's talking to my cousin a certain way. No one's doing that. And so I'll always have that. I don't feel like I can't say and disagree with them on certain things. They're always going to have my back, and they'll always have my support regardless. That's not something I've never felt that way. This is a new feeling that I'm seeing now. And it's so weird to see people just flock to an idea that isn't even rooted. You went to college and you don't even know these people, and all of a sudden you're going to ditch them over your family. Coming from someone who's had to rely, my mom saved my life. She gave me that kidney. My sister took care of me. She looked over my finances, helped me get things. My brother was there making food, taking care of me, helped me with my car to get transportation. My dad financially was doing what he could, helped me, gave me a place to stay. Like, it was family that came together. The support of my aunts, my uncles, everybody that was there for me, willing to get tested, and I think that's being lost on people, and they're looking at like the news and these groups, and they're looking at these surrogate they're not going to be there for you if you lose a leg. Right. They're not going to, so for you to be pissed off because your father grew up in a different time and he supports not Trump, but he supports a conservative agenda, and it's because it's what got him where, people do what works for them. He's got a house, he's got property, he got this or that, or
everybody,
it's like, hey, he understands who you are. He's not going to disown you because, you're going to vote liberal or whatever. If anything, he doesn't care. He's just glad his kid's educated and doing something with his life. So those are kind of important things that I wish people would really focus on and look at. Look, your family is the first group that you need to look out for and be aware of, and kind of, look to for guidance. And in a way, I feel like I owe my younger cousins and stuff some sense of mentorship. If they're going to reach out and say something, or even they're saying something foolish. I just grew up in that kind of culture. It was like, I got to check you, man. You don't know what you're saying. You need to, wake up, man. Like, look at some things and gain some perspective. And even in another sense, like my sister, it doesn't always have to be, like you said, a man. It doesn't have to be someone older than you. My sister, I look up to her. She's an Olympian, boxer, Golden Gloves, things like that. A lot of that, I mean,
I've met your sister.
You've met my sister, yeah. I mean, we grew up, I took her everywhere with me, but I made it difficult for her because she was my sister, and I wanted her to be hard, Yeah. And she got into boxing.
Beat you up now.
Oh man, she's good at what she does. I mean, I got a good ground game, but she's got a good stand up. She's Golden Gloves boxer.
Get on the inside, man. Grab a leg.
Gonna have to shoot for it.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of her. I'm proud of my brother. I mean, he's been able to do things with his hands that I wish I could do. So, it's just.
But I think that's the family unit for the most part has been under attack for a long time.
It has.
And I think that social media has a way of even taking families and pulling them apart, right? Because even like that dichotomy of thought will just like you ingest all these things of like, if somebody thinks this way, they're evil and they're bad and they're terrible,
right? And
then you see like a family member post something that's like, hey, this, and then you've been conditioned to think that person is evil for even thinking that, and then but it's terrible. But I see it all the time. I hate seeing family argue over stuff, like especially during election year, because I just feel like it is the ultimate puppet game when it comes to like during election year. This is part of it. This is politics in 2020. Everything we're ingesting, we have to have a little humility and just know that all of the inputs that we're getting, it's happening for a reason. And the only way to find your base and talk to your base is to divide and put people in camps where now you know where your voter base is and they can talk to them. And what happens is it becomes like that. And this is what happened in 2016. It's like we all know, like a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the divisiveness is because it's election year, but it's like we can't get past that, and we're just focused on like the feelings of it all. But I hate seeing family fight, especially right now, because I'm like, dude, December is going to come, January is going to come, and I'm not saying this stuff goes away, but you're amped up.
Well, the big thing too is like, I think the danger that people have is you think you know enough to be right, but you're not aware of how much you don't know that you might be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous, right? Because you're going to go on a limb on this thing you think you're right about. I mean, look at, when Obama was coming in, it was like, he's going to do the worst for us, and maybe he did. There's a lot of things that point to some things he didn't do so well at, but the world didn't end.
Right.
But then here it is again, right? Trump's going to be the worst of us and he's going to do this and that. But I mean,
maybe they got Bush, man. Everybody loves Bush now. It's like, dude,
but at the time, and it was like, dude, the world's not going to end. These individuals are not going to.
Look at his pretty painting. It's like, you guys thought this guy was Hitler 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's always Hitler, right?
It's always Hitler.
How come it's never Stalin? I think, what is it? I think he's killed more people than Hitler.
Or,
but what are you?
Mussolini or something.
Mussolini, yeah.
But it's like, no, now because he's like...
It's the mustache. I think it's the mustache.
Yeah, he's adorable and he like paints in his garage and you're like, oh.
Well, actually, and he's a caliber guy, and for everything, so a buddy of mine, Dave Smith, he's met him several times, and through him I've lived vicariously through some of his stuff, and he's just a good dude. He's done a lot for a lot of veterans. I mean, on that end, I will, say, hey, I've seen that happen firsthand. But also, I mean, I just found out not too long ago that, his IQ is actually above par. He's
I'm sure.
So I know he came off a certain way, but man, sometimes you're just not made for TV, or, they're going to focus on. I mean, look, here's another reason why I have a big issue about what's going on. I think it's been unprecedented at the level of like scrutiny Trump's come under. You know what I mean? I've never seen any other president just dissected like that.
I mean, but he does ask for it.
He does ask for it. I don't even want to defend that.
That's where it gets so difficult, because like for me, I'm a middle of the road guy. Like, right. And I don't just say that. I really mean it. I'm a registered libertarian. Right. I really don't like the two-party system. I believe in local governance. I believe in listening to the people, maximum freedom, and then in common sense.
I love it that we live in a world now where you have to throw out your credentials before people.
What?
I love that. That's the world we live in, right? You got to throw out your credentials. Like, hey,
What? Right? Like,
but you have to now, because people want to, like the attorneys you said that were, guarding their house. It's like, oh, those people are right wing and all this stuff. But the reality is they're this, and it feels that way. That it's unfortunate that you have to. Like, people would think I'm a big Trump supporter, but I'm a registered Democrat, and that's probably going to change. Yeah. And I'm not going to go Republican either. I'm probably going to go down the road you're going, Libertarian.
And I really hope that, and I've voted across the board, since I started voting. The fact is that both parties are failing us. Mm-hmm. And most people are socially liberal, and financially conservative.
Pretty much.
Economically conservative, for the most part. Right. And I don't even like the Libertarian Party for the most part. I think they're wacky, and
it's a little wacky.
But I think they're young. I think young-minded, and I've tried to sit through a Libertarian presidential debate. It's just really hard to listen to, because they just don't.
Well,
they're not speaking to people. But the fact is that we need more options, and both parties have become so big and so money driven, mm-hmm. And corrupt, that nobody's being heard.
Well, it's important to focus on that, right? Because there is a big thing to kind of look at when you say corrupt. There's this idea that one side is for the people and one side is for big corporations, right? But I wish people could really take stock in looking at that Democratic
Both
side.
sides are for business,
Right.
for money.
So I think it's more deceptive and deceitful to be getting it from this group that's telling you they're going to get you, they're going to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just backdoor dealing. I mean, they're basically doing the same thing. So it's like, that's really left a disdain in my mouth. Like, I can't support that. It's you don't expect it from the people that are supposed to be taking care of you, which is why it just seems harder for me. And which is why I've taken a stand on it. Like, I don't like it at all. I just don't like it at all. But I expected it from this guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? But from you, like, what is it? Et tu, Brute, right? Like, Caesar was probably, everyone stabbed him, but he was more pissed off at Brutus. Like, you, my best friend?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah,
and it's harder to swallow when that side is constantly taking claim to the moral high ground.
Right.
And do I think a third party is going to just come up and really change the landscape? Absolutely not. But I feel that more and more people will abandon the Republican Democratic Party, and a third party will grow, and at least there will be some hope in having more options on the table and more places for people to go. Now, there is an argument that when there have been a third party introduced into an old system, that what ends up happening is the third party will grow, and then that third party ends up becoming a swing, right?
Right.
But then they start to they actually end up becoming absorbed by an existing party, and then now all of a sudden you have one party that's actually way more powerful than it was when it was just two parties. So there's an argument, and that's happened in Europe before.
Right. It has. And at the same time, we have checks and balances, and things will correct themselves eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that we just have to do. There was a time where I would talk to people and they were just, I'm not really into politics. Unfortunately, it's something you should be involved in, because without everybody at least being responsible enough to kind of know some things, you're going to get that. So that's that part of extreme ownership. Like, hey, you can't be mad about what you have if you look back and you're like, I haven't voted in the last 5 elections.
Yeah.
Well, then, can you really blame any party at that point?
Right.
And it's like, hey, get more involved. It's almost the same way, like with everyone saying, it was a real shame to see all the riots that were happening and things that were happening, all the destruction and everything that was going on, because I'm like, hey, if you don't like something, LAPD's hiring.
Right.
Most police forces are hiring. You should really, take stock, join. If you think socialism's good or something like that, dude, join the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Go see what it's like in countries that have used it, and then come back with the experience and knowledge, of it. But for people to get out there and just say certain things, I've been to third world countries. Let me tell you, I was grateful to come back home.
Yeah.
There were things that I really loved about it. And yet, that's me. There's other people that could be like, I could live out here. I could do without all of the material necessities and all that, and I can live off the land, and I love these people. A lot of the people I ran into over there were very peaceful. It wasn't like what was being portrayed on the news. And then there's definitely that group that just is not, So,
well, it's hard whenever there's a like when something's illegal and people just rebel against the illegal thing. I just feel like, well, then we have to change the law. You don't just get to pick and choose which laws we follow.
Yeah.
There's a process, and we have to actually change the law.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that people do participate in,
Mm-hmm.
and can have a voice, and you can but you don't just get to pick and choose which ones. Like we have a social contract, which we all agree, like, hey, this is how we're going to do things. And unless you're going to participate in creating that contract, you don't get to just pick and choose which part of it you think is valid.
And you're right. And you brought up a good point earlier. Everyone was really up in arms about the man and woman on their lawn with their weapons, but those same people had nothing to say about the guys at Chaz at the border wall with armed, keeping people in and out, created a border essentially, which I thought most liberals were against. Borders are not good. So, it's just, you've got to be open enough and be able to see what's happening and what's going on. Even that little experiment failed miserably and kind of started to take on the shape of kind of like where you were going with the third party. There's a reason, things are where they're at. And also let's keep in mind that we're a fairly young country.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, have there been injustices over time? Sure. But I mean, if you know your history and you go back, let's just go back to like France, England, and Spain. I mean, those guys basically conquered everything there was to conquer. Are we going to go that far back? Are we going to go to war now with those countries because of stuff they did years ago?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, at a certain point, there's things that are kind of, we've got to really take stock on what are we going to look at, the past or the future. Personally, I only know from my own experience, and maybe, you know, someone would say, well, you're privileged to do that. But I just know that looking forward has always been the best option. You know what I mean? If I look back, I will pick apart my life and find tons of reasons why I should just keel over and live in a little ball and not go any further, because life just really gave it to me and it's unfair and, you know, whatever. But if I just look forward and move forward, then I can do that. And if we and really what we're talking about is getting everyone together on the same playing field. I mean, we could do tons of great things if we were all together on the same page and kind of.
But that goes back to the point of the election year things.
Mm-hmm.
The only way power is able to be held is by dividing people.
Us, yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening.
Right.
We're being divided. This was not now, and again, like they're so good at this. Like you can't even say things, even if like my intention could be 100% pure and my motives for saying it pure, and what I'm saying is generally positive, right?
Right.
But you can't go against the narrative, or else you're deemed irresponsible or bad, right? But at the, I won't like censor myself that much, where I'll say us being divided this is the game. This is the system. We're seeing the system in play. Us being divided keeps the focus off of what's going on in the government.
Right.
And through this whole COVID thing, there's a lot of things that we could all be upset together about.
Right. First thing I want to lead with is, you know what, I think people need to hear more of, hey, you know what, it's okay to say, I don't know.
Right.
It's okay to say, I don't know. Like I if someone asked me about something, I have no problem telling you, no, I don't know, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about it? Let me listen to what you have to say. Okay, well, right now in my heart of hearts, I think that sounds terrible, but let me research it.
Yeah.
And you're not getting that, and you're not, just people offhand are going off of like, and the worst part about it is like, oh, well, you know, Cardi B said this. So, and I'm like, Cardi B.
Right.
You know, like people are looking at these celebrities and people that are, you know, have this lifestyle that is nothing that represents what you're going to have. And if anything, you have no idea what that's like on the opposite end. I mean, you're probably thinking they're your socialist buddy, but they're living more of a capitalist lifestyle than you could possibly imagine. Right. So you've got to be aware of what's happening. And I get it. You know, I'm just older and I don't get it. I'm not in tune.
We're just dinosaurs,
man. Maybe. But at some point I want to give a lot of credit, and there is credit that is due. I did talk to a lot of young people, or younger than me at least, and was kind of like, hey, what do you feel about that? And surprisingly, they're like, I don't like any of it, but I just stay quiet because and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that there's that symptom, but maybe in a certain way it kind of leaves people. It's going to shock a lot of people that might feel, you know, because I don't know. I heard that there's this saying in Hollywood, right? You know who's liberal because they'll tell you, but you don't know who's conservative because they won't say anything, which is another sad case. That here you have an established, you know, what is it? Like place of employment type scenario, right? A business. Yeah. And there's clearly a limit on what you can say. And it's like, this is America. There shouldn't be a limit on what you can say or talk about or express. I'm like, hold on, man.
College used to be a place where you would go to find out who you were.
Right.
But now it's a place where you go where you find out who they tell you are. And it's sad.
It is sad. And if anything, when I went to college, the only thing I learned for certain, I didn't know anything about anything.
And that's the thing. Like when people find out, like I went to school for political science, they're like, oh, you must really know everything about politics. No, I just learned that I didn't know.
Yeah.
A lot. They just had me read a bunch of books and write reports, and all it did was like expose me to how much I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
And that's true. I know what you're saying, and that's absolutely true. That's what I walked away with. At the same time, there were instances, and this is on me, and I'll own up to it, where I kind of felt like, you know, a little, you know, I know a little more about, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I love that feeling.
You know,
feels good.
And you've got to put
like
those
when you watch a documentary. about like being a vegan.
Right. And you're like,
you know,
you're going to eat that meat?
There's really not a lot of BCAAs in that, but you can supplement if you need to. Yeah.
Right. And it's the worst thing because it's like, and this, speaking to what you've done, I mean, you've been in the cage.
Yeah.
And how upsetting or weird or just like you would want to blow someone off that was like, oh, you know what you should have done? Zero combat experience, zero cage experience, zero hand-to-hand, and they're telling you that you should have done this.
Yeah.
And you're just going like, you're ridiculous. Yeah. You're ridiculous. And everybody kind of feels that way. I mean, there's even a term, right? A Monday night quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like everybody knows that. That's something we know, and yet somehow it's just absent from our minds when we want to talk foreign policy. Oh, you know foreign policy, do you?
I was gonna ask you that. Mm-hmm. Does it? So being somebody who's done it, mm-hmm. Is it hard to listen to people have really strong opinions on like foreign policy when? So here's another problem, and I'll zoom out, then I'll zoom right back in.
Sure.
One party used to always be for like not intervention and being like the anti-war party.
Yeah.
And but now it seems to have flipped a little bit, where I feel like the other side's being almost like forced to be pro-war on a lot of things. Like,
right.
How are you going to let this slide? You have to do something about it. You have to, and like pushing for.
The important distinction there is that that's just a temporary concept right now. That's not how they really feel about it, but it's because, and I have to say this, because if it was anyone else except Trump trying to create a peace deal, everyone would be on board with that.
Right.
But
that piece was like
I did too. I did too. And I was
like
surprised
North Korea was a great example of that, where it was just every time there was something, it was like, you know, he's a traitor to our country.
Look,
like,
man,
I thought he was trying to stop nuclear, you know.
The only people
Armageddon.
and this is the thing that people don't realize, the only people that see the end of war are the dead.
Right.
And that's it. And it's emotional for me to see people that have no idea wanting to send their children. Like, really, that's what you're saying. Hey, would you send your kid to war? Because this conflict that you want to get into could last even longer with more people. And it's like, dude, you don't want to go there. And I'll be all honest, like, and this isn't to like pat me on the back or sound all strong, but I just kind of felt in the moment when I was there, like, there was some movie said it, but they were like, that guy seems like the kind of guy who would have been a warrior, whether it was 2020 or back in the Roman days, he would have been in a gladiator arena. And I felt that way at the time. And I still sort of feel that way, except I'm old now. But I kind of felt like, look, man, I feel like in another lifetime, I was just that guy in combat, in war, doing what needed to be done to protect other people that couldn't do it for themselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was my take on it. And I wanted to be there, and I wanted to be there to sort of what I was saying about, hey, I wanted to be there to have my influence, to make sure it went right, to make sure people weren't doing anything wrong. And I rose into a leadership position, and that's how it was. And I made sure we did everything by the book. We were quiet professionals always, and we did everything the way we were supposed to, even if that meant including we had to take shots and really make sure who we were engaging was the enemy. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I'll put my life on the line anytime to make sure that I'm going to make the right decision. And that's the hard part. And unfortunately, you know, it also leads back to the police that are willing to make those calls that are getting chastised right now. And they're the victims of bad policy and poor, you know, media coverage and a lot of things. And I feel bad. And at the same time, they're also responsible for some of it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you can't have it both ways. I'm not going to not look a blind eye.
I think it's a difference between talking about bad actors and or just the people, mm-hmm. and then the actual system, right? So there's a lot of issues in the system, and there's some bad apples, and those people need to be held responsible and be accountable.
And the politicians are getting off on it, right? Because they're the ones who enforce certain laws. So if you don't like the fact that police are enforcing this law, guess what?
That goes back to what I was saying. Like you know, example that, you know, if I was smarter, I wouldn't even talk about, but I'm not, so I'm going to. You know, like with you know, Rayshard Brooks.
Yes.
No one's debating whether or not he was intoxicated, right? He was like sleeping at the wheel. Mm-hmm. He was intoxicated. Now, what ended up happening was tragic, and I wish it never happened. And I have a feeling it happens more than people really know. But unless we're going to say that drinking and driving is not an arrestable offense, then we have to accept the fact that you're going to get arrested if you're drinking and driving.
Right. That's just
now, see, the problem is everyone always wants to, point blame and say, but police are there to carry out the laws that we, the people, essentially create. It's a whole system thing.
Right.
There's a whole money, system there.
And I'm not happy with the way, prison systems are working out. I mean, there should be a serious rehabilitation aspect to a lot of these places, because you could go in and not be a criminal and come out of a full-fledged criminal, and then to get back up from where you're at is going to be super difficult, because now you have a record. Now you have all these things. So yeah, I don't necessarily agree with it, but man, it's like you pointed out, we all voted for that.
We all agreed that was how we were going to, and if we think, I when I've talked to people that have gotten a DUI,
mm-hmm.
what stops them from drinking and driving going forward is not the night in jail.
No,
it's the incredible fines. It's the sitting through all of the the courses.
Right.
It's being dinged on the record and having that hang over your head forever. It's your car being impounded, the insurance rates for the rest of you.
Yeah,
it's just like there's a huge burden. But maybe it isn't. Maybe just having somebody sleep in a jail cell and taking away that
which,
part.
You know what?
Maybe there's a case.
And I'm sure that probably happens occasionally, but you're not going to see it on the news. I mean, have you ever gotten let go on a ticket? I have. Yeah. Yeah. And that happens, but not always. And you're kind of the luck of the draw. You never know who you're going to encounter that night and who's going to cut you the slack and how you react. Now, a lot of what I've seen on some things that go bad, I know for a fact, if I start telling a police officer, you don't need to see my license, and you don't do, I'm going to start causing things that might have just gone like, hey, you know what? You're good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's been a real narrative that's being pushed for a lack of respect for people we should respect. And it's not even police, it's our adults, anybody. It's family.
Because we saw this years ago with all these viral videos of like kids fighting their teachers.
Right.
Like, and those
insane.
And everyone is just saying, how is this even happening? And then you go, 8 years later, and now all these videos of people doing the same thing. The cops like, what do you think happened to those kids? Those are the same kids that we were like kind of laughing at, 5 years ago. Now that this is happening, and again, like I know I can hear the arguments now of like, well, why that is. But
you know what? It's a good thing to bring up, because people should look at statistics. People should look at why that's happening. It's very deep. I mean, listening to people like Thomas Sowell and, having a hard time thinking, but Thomas Sowell recently is who I've been listening to, and like he puts things into perspective that is great, and I love listening to what he has to say on fallacies of like prejudice and success and things like that. And it's true, when you look at certain things, we might have been given a bad hand, but I mean, even within myself, right? If I wanted to say, hey, Mexicans have it hard, it's tough and you don't know what it's like, but then I can't help but go to school and notice that the Asian kid is doing a lot better than I'm doing. Right. What's he doing differently? Do I ask myself that question and go, oh, he doesn't watch TV. He's studying day and night.
Right.
I mean, there's a balance there. I'm not saying you have to go that, but I mean, there's certain things that you have to recognize and go, hey, I know why that guy's doing better. I mean, he doesn't have it as good. He doesn't even speak the language and he's kicking my butt.
For me, growing up in the projects, I probably have a lot more in common with everybody I grew up with, which, we were the only white family. I have a lot more in common with everybody that I grew up with there than I do the white kids that were, just 10 miles away in the foothills.
True. And in some ways I look at that, I'm glad that happened to me, because it's
me too.
I can struggle
you,
a
not
lot.
Me. I hated it. I'm glad it happened to you too.
Well, no, I look back at it and it's like, I know how to struggle.
Right.
It's nothing new. And for people that don't, it collapses them. You know what I mean? And it's not always, and none of these things I'm saying like indefinite, right? There's exceptions to the rule.
Everybody is different, and I think that's why it matters, because everybody is different. But when we fall into just accepting these narratives, maybe that person who is different, that really does have that fire and is going to do well, starts accepting the narrative that is crammed down their throat.
Right.
And that they can't do it because the system is...
And that's why I have a hard time with certain policies or movements, because I'm like, if this thing at the core is based on me feeling sorry for myself, I can't get on board.
Yeah.
I also can't get on board with, let's say there was a Mexicans matter or something, right? And the whole idea was to somehow put it back on, we're not going to be happy till we see, whites picking fruit out there and putting. I'm like, why? No one should be doing it. Like, let's figure out a way to make the wages better. Let's figure out a way. You know what I mean? But I'm not trying to. I mean, vengeance isn't anything good, and I feel that there's some of that in the core of it, and maybe that's not the meaning or the whole truth behind it, but it's gone haywire, and it's gotten to that point, and the sentiment out there among these young people is just that, and they're angry, and like, we owe it as adults to kind of put that in check. If I went out and put a movement together and it started going crazy, then that's my fault. Yeah. And I'm just being reckless
instead of
and
people
careless.
just double down on it and just make
and trying to figure out new ways to say that, crime's okay. And another thing I take a big thing about, and I know it's controversial, but Candace Owens had a point of view on George Floyd. Now, I'm not going to take it that far, but I think it's important to recognize, like, I would hate to see our new, Martin Luther King's and Rosa Parks, George Floyd, a guy who was on fentanyl and methamphetamine. I get what they stand for. It was like, they're the catalyst for people realizing that there's bad policing going on, and that's what it should be. Right. But to put them on shirts and to raise up this whole thing, same thing with, was it Michael Brown? Someone, hands up, don't shoot. Yeah. But it was kind of crazy because then it ended up turning out that wasn't the case. Right. But no one goes back and fixes it. Or even a better one, the kid from the Covington school.
Yeah,
that was terrible, and no one went back and recanted. I didn't see any of my friends that took the other side and say, "Hey, you know what? I said something terrible the other day, and I judged this kid."
Nobody ever does that.
No one ever does that.
So like there used to be something where if you misreported something, you would go back and you would do a correction, right? But the problem is that no one ever reads the correction.
No one ever reads it.
And once the pot has been stirred, the damage is done. Right. So the Covington kids is a great example of the media already had its mind made up.
Oh, they were already going to put out something. And I mean, even to see it from people like that have platforms, Bill Maher, for example, calling him out, like saying he had such a punchable face or something like that. And I'm going, look, first of all, be good at what you're good at. Yeah. If you guys are not going to be the violent war people, then be the non-violent war people. Yeah. Don't say punch this kid in the face. Like, come on, man.
And it's and honestly, the only way you can get away with saying that, and I'm not going to do like the, but because he's white and he looked like he was well off, right?
Well, that's another thing I take offense to, right? Because I'm like, what do people mean by white anyway? What's white? Irish?
Oh yeah. So like for me, right? Like for me, I'm like my dad came here when he was 4 years old from Portugal. So I'm 50% Portuguese. He's full-blood Portuguese.
Yeah,
right?
Portuguese, yeah.
Yeah, Portuguese. And then I'm Irish and Cherokee Indian. So it's like, okay. So yeah. But if you see me, I probably have a very punchable face. Like I probably have a typical white punchable face, but it's just like just 25% power, because I mean, even then I can make an argument about the Irish. I mean, they weren't exactly...
The Irish were a disenfranchised group of immigrants early on in history, right? Yeah. So you look at it and it was like, man.
So like my Scott-Irish side, like if you ever wonder why like my last name is so messed up and mispronounced, it's because when they came over here, they had to change the spelling so they get jobs, but they kept the pronunciation. So I have to still deal with that. But
I don't understand it, and how you can accept and adopt that kind of black and white. Like, I just don't get it.
It's crazy. Like, because I mean, if there's one thing the Ancestry.com 23andMe thing open up is like, we kind of all realize we're all a blend. So what percentage of people is it okay to hate? What percentage of people is it okay to blame? What percentage?
We shouldn't be blaming anyone, period.
Exactly.
We should be finding common ground and moving forward towards a better something together.
And that's not to say you can't acknowledge the problems in history, in the context of history, and also acknowledge what has propelled from them that's still alive today. There's still a problem.
But for the most part, I think we still have an opportunity to change that as a group. I mean, that's the great thing about America, and that's why still, right, if America was so disenfranchising to Mexicans, why are they still trying to come here? Right. There's a reason for that, and it's still great in spite of its, nothing's perfect. I mean, and that's what I hate too. People are making these comparisons towards Germany and towards Japan or whatever you want to, but I mean, watch the Olympics. There's a very unique thing that we have that they don't. Everyone in that from that country is one. It
is funny.
Like
it's funny
one race.
When we talk about like what is the most racist country, and everyone wants to say the U.S., and then you look at their Olympic teams, and you're like, wait
I don't know about that.
But
a lot of it too is they're a lot smaller. They don't have a lot of the issues that we get to deal with, and they're things we get to deal with. They're not. It's not bad or good. It's just things that we get to work on together. But what I wanted to get back to was there was something, and this might be controversial, and I'm hoping someone will talk to me about it later, but it was very interesting. I saw this, a friend had posted something, and she was showing this girl who was graduating from a college here in the United States. I think it was UCLA. And so she talked about this sad story about her in Mexico and how it was terrible for her over there and her family and whatnot. And she was fortunate enough, and she made it over here, and she gets over here, and makes this life for herself, and she does really well, and the story goes on, and she does great, and she gets her degree. And then in the picture that she has with her family, she's taking a picture, and she has the Mexican flag on her. Now, I'm okay with that. Like, I love my Mexican heritage, but I mean, at the heart of who I am, I'm American. You know what I mean? I'm an American of Mexican descent or Hispanic descent, however you want to say it. And, oftentimes they'll say, yeah, I'm Mexican because, the weird labels, right?
Yeah.
But I'm American. And most people are, right? You're Irish and Portuguese, but you're American. So the strange thing for me when I saw that was, here was this story about how terrible it was in Mexico and how she couldn't have the opportunity. She comes to America, gets the opportunity, but takes the photo with the Mexican flag. I'm okay with it. She's free to do it. I get it. But I wanted to ask, like, hey, how did you come to that conclusion? What is that about? And it's okay, right? Say, hey, I love my country despite its, inequities, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay too. But I just wanted to know, like, how do you, because to me, I would have been, when I read the story, I would have been like, hey man, like, yeah, that's cool, but this country gave me an opportunity. And a lot of people do see it that way. I just wanted to know what that was. And I know it sounds controversial to say that, but it's just, it's strange to me. It was just strange that it was like, man, if another place I came from had treated me terribly and I didn't have any advantages, and I came here and it gave me the advantage to be something, beyond myself that I never thought I could be, it was like, how is it that you still, but maybe it's just an identity thing, right? Maybe it's just not being a victim okay, this is why I started, but they take pride. But I think it's also about identity, right? But both things work, because I think she was proving both things. And right now it's important to look at that, because it's like, if she can get past the inequities of her own country and still have that pride for it, shouldn't we be able to?
Right.
Shouldn't we be able to do that and kind of say, this is still the greatest country, and it still has an opportunity to flip, whether we're in chaos or not, we still have an opportunity to make it what we want it to be, because that's how the laws and how everything's written. It might be hard, but what is it? Nothing easy has ever been anything worth something. You know what I mean? So it should be hard and difficult, because so much is at stake. It shouldn't be easy to get it. It should be a difficult process.
But we also live in a time where identity has become most people are very self concerned and self-absorbed, and your identity, like what makes you different, what makes you stand out, and I think that like people latch onto anything that they can say, like, oh, that's who I am, that's rather than just being themselves. So I have friends that like they're maybe they're part Irish, like a little part, but you would think that they were just like
full blown,
because they're just like because they identify with that, and they go like, oh, that's who I am.
I'm guilty of it too. Like when Julio Cesar Chavez used to fight, oh man, forget about it, right? It was like, is he fighting that American? I'm all Julio Cesar Chavez, So I understand it, but I just thought it was something important to bring up so that we could look at that, right? If she could get past those inequities, shouldn't we be able to? It's a good point.
But I do think there are certain things that communities are that they deal with, especially the Black community, that hasn't really been addressed, and it's generational. So for example, we were talking about like growing up in the projects, and this goes into what you were saying about the system kind of being against dads in general, right? And I saw that a lot, where you could take the Black community in general had a lower divorce rate than other demographics.
Divorce rate?
Yeah, before
Okay.
before 1960.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
then- and
You're
then-
right. I
and
think it
then-
was 26%,
Yeah,
and it was a problem, considered a problem then.
yeah,
And now it's 70%,
yeah. Now it's the highest, right?
the highest.
And the reason, one reason that from at least from what I've gathered is because we've replaced black dads with the government, and
Pretty
now
much.
and the government has become daddy, and
Right.
and the daddy thinks it has the right to spank, and that's part of what I saw growing up was in our Section 8 housing, you weren't allowed to have a 2-parent household, or else you got kicked out. You got off the
you'd
list.
lose your funding. Yeah.
So there was a financial incentive to not
Right.
have a father in the house,
Right.
and so you lose the male role model.
Right.
You lose, and is that directly racial? No, I was there too,
Yeah.
but I was the only white family, and it was all.
Well, and what it does is it forces you now to almost, you have to vote in
Right.
that spectrum, because otherwise you're going to lose benefits.
Right. And you become and this is where sometimes helping or you have, it's a fine line between enabling enabling behavior that doesn't make you strive for more. It actually makes it to where you can't afford to try to do better.
Right.
You know, you can't afford to make more money, or else you lose the money that helps you eat.
Well, not only that, it also strips away people's dignity,
Right.
their
Right.
self-respect,
Yeah.
and it's tough to gain that stuff back, and it's hard to gain it back, and it has its effects. You know, you put someone in that realm, and it just, who knows what's going to happen. You know, so yeah, it's a big problem. It's something that we should be looked at, and it's also something that I look at, and another reason why I feel so like torn with the Democratic Party, because of those types of policies.
Right.
You
And
know what I mean?
that's where I say oftentimes, it's more just the solution is where people differ, and sometimes I don't think proposing a different solution to a problem makes you naive or ignorant of the problem.
Right.
Sometimes you see a solution doing more harm than good, or maybe not the best way. Sometimes, saying no to funding something isn't because you hate the people that you're,
Right.
but you feel that could create an environment to where those people will be worse off, and you care about those people so much that you
Right.
don't want it. So like understanding that, like, where people are coming from with those solutions isn't out of hate most of the time. It's because you just don't think that that's the right solution to the problem.
Well, here's the other important thing to look at. I think we've lost sight of this and lost track of it, is that, and we've seen this firsthand going through that leadership course,
Yeah.
being in charge and being the leader, it's the hardest job. And not because you're doing so much, but because you have to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
No one's going to like you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm seeing is a fail of leadership at the top, because they feel like they have to cater and they want people to like, and it's like, dude, that's
There's also
not
a
why you're there.
Yeah, and there's
You're
also
there to make tough calls.
cowarding to the mob mentality too.
Exactly.
You see that a lot right now,
Right.
Throughout the country, of just on one hand, you're there to serve the people, so you got to listen, right?
Right.
And you have to be, have some humility, and you got to listen, but also understand that you're not just representing the people that come knocking at your door and banging and screaming and yelling.
Right.
You're representing all the people. So if you're just cowarding or bending the knee to a small group of people, you are not serving the community as a whole.
Not at all, right.
And so that's where you have to, if you want to be a part of real change,
Right.
you have to enroll the rest of the community to get on your page and then make change the right way, and not doing it through a mob mentality.
Exactly. That's the worst of us, right? Once you're in that mob mentality and you're doing all that, I mean, geez, it shouldn't come to that. You should already know that things are not good. And people want to look at it as like, oh, it's agreeing with me. People recognize, no, it's not good. It says more about society and everything as a whole, and less about whatever your topic is.
Yeah.
It just says that, how did we come to this?
Yeah.
And if you're going to look at it as a positive, then I feel sorry for you, because that's
Yeah.
not what it should be. And if I was leading a movement, I wouldn't want it to look like a mob and a riot.
Right.
Here's an example. I was doing some digging and I'm looking at some stuff. And when I was looking at the marches and the things that Martin Luther King was doing, I mean, you can do it yourself. I look at the pictures and everything, and they're all dressed in suits and ties. They look amazing. And then I look at this new movement and I'm looking through the photos, and everybody just looks, wow, terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now, and I'm generalizing, I don't want to, but saying everybody, but there's a big difference when you put those photos up and you can see the professionalism and these people, it just speaks volume when I looked at those, and it just, something clicked in my head, and I'm like, this is what's wrong, and this is how it gets done. So, you know, that's just how I looked at it. And for anyone to kind of say, no, you know, that's not how it gets done, I'm like, I don't know. A lot happened because of that. A lot changed. And even after that, because he was an inspiration to others that were like, hey man, never again, you know? So, and I don't know that some guy throwing a Molotov cocktail at the police station is going to be that guy that'll be like, yeah,
that guy.
not for me. No. And definitely not for even the younger people that are out there now. When they grow up and they realize a few things, they're going to look back and be like, oh, cringe. That's terrible. That is a terrible way to do things.
Yeah. And I think there's like wanting to romanticize a lot of things, like when the governor of or the mayor of Seattle, when she was talking about the summer of love. It's almost like you want to romanticize it, and it was just it was only until people knocked on her door then she was like appalled.
Yeah, and where was her door, by the way? That's another thing that I take issue with. She was living in some mansion.
Really?
Yeah, she had a really nice house. I mean, a lot of them, I think too of like the leader right now, the House leader for the Democratic, Pelosi.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that woman is rich beyond rich. And that's your, I mean.
There's a few memes going around that, it's, Schumer and Pelosi who have been in power for almost 40 years.
And what have they done?
And they're blaming Trump for issues that they've supposed to be
That's a really
on.
good point. I mean, look, I don't want to sound all Trumpy and everything, but I mean, the reality is if you're going to talk about, in one hand, how difficult change is and that's why we got to riot, then you have to recognize that someone can't come in and be in office for 3 years and destroy the world.
Right.
Where did that come from?
Right.
Years of certain things happening that you haven't been privy to. Read a book, take a look, go do the homework, because a lot of it has been...
I'm supposed to say Reading Rainbow right there.
Reading Rainbow. Yeah. Dude, I love that guy.
You just did the lyrics. Open a book, take a look, Reading Rainbow.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, my head's full of these things.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
No, I hear you.
But, I mean, it just... It's a travesty that people cannot freely express themselves.
These are freedoms that we have that no one else has, which is why people want to be here and come here, and we want to just give them up.
Right. And again, it goes back to the hypocrisy of the parties of, the people that you used to look towards as, liberals and thought leaders, of people that were all about, individual freedoms and being who you are and freedom of expression and, just like, being accepted. And that's totally flipped.
Well, and the other thing is, like, Americans were looked at as being like strong and, like, I mean, we're a strong country, strong people. And now it's like, you say somebody's wrong name or whatever they want to be identified with. And it's this cry culture of like, oh, you hurt my feelings or this or that. And I'm like, man, we got to be stronger than that. Yeah. You know what I mean? The reality of life is much harder.
Especially if we're going to war with Russia, right?
Well, if that's what they want to do, I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't think those
How do you feel about that? That's got to bother you.
Well, here's the part that people don't know that I can speak to, personally, having been out, in Afghanistan. I mean, people don't realize, like, we were getting attacked by private soldiers long before, and they were Chechens from Russia. So it's like, that was already going on. That's just, I mean, watch that movie, Charlie Wilson's War. I mean, we were supplying Afghans with missiles and stuff to fight the Russians. Right. So this is nothing new. It's just something to put out there for people who are uneducated that want to get a soundbite and have an agenda. That's really what it is, right? And they want this retribution. It's like, what retribution? You want to attack Russia?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Are we ending war? Are we trying to look?
And again, that goes back to what I was saying about,
coming from people who've never been in a cage, who've never been downrange. Like, dude, really?
Like, who do you want to send? Do you get to pick the people? Who do you want to
send your kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's not to say that I won't go. Like, that's just in my nature.
Right, but that should be that should be, you should be rooting for it.
No, not at all.
And that's what I feel is happening a lot. Like, we need to, there's plenty of issues here. And right now the spotlight's on the civil unrest.
Right.
But the election year tends to bring some of these things to the surface. But even that aside, there's still all these other things we were worried about 2 years ago, man. There's a lot of stuff.
A lot of important things.
Yeah, man.
That are just kind of taking a seat back to
I mean, healthcare, really, this could have been a great time for everybody to get on board with like some type of healthcare reform.
Right.
And just really start planning for when this happens again, instead of planning for when this happens again,
right.
and what we're going to do to take care of people and how we're going to restructure things now to make sure we can do that. This is a great opportunity to start talking about this, but that's been completely pushed aside.
Yeah. I want to take this opportunity to touch on something kind of hit home in a certain way before, anything. I'd be remiss if I didn't. That whole incident that's happened with the Army with the female that was recently found, they found a shallow grave. It's a terrible thing that's happened, and just for people that are watching, it's on my mind, and it should be on everyone's mind. I don't know why it's not getting more attention.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I believe her name's Vanessa, and I'd have to ask Estelle there. Is it Vanessa Guillen? So she was missing, and she was missing from Fort Hood, Texas. And they ended up finding her body, and it turns out that her higher ups, a sergeant and two others, were involved in her disappearance and probably more, evil things that they did to her before she was killed. So it's something that's on my mind. I know it's on other people's mind, but I just wanted people that are watching that are there. It's on my mind, and I hope something gets done about it. I don't know what, and I wish that it was a bigger topic because it hits home. She's, first of all, she's an Army person that hits home for me. She's an American, she's Mexican, it hits home, and I'm like, man, just like you, I know you're a fighter. I know you're someone who would, help anyone out that's getting taken advantage of or, that's being bullied. And to me, it's like, I wish I could have been there to stop it. It hit hard. I was like, I have a sister, we all have, you have daughters. It just hit home that no one was there to take care of her, and somehow the military system kind of didn't work the way it should have and didn't take care of her, so it's upsetting to say the least. And I know that, it's not getting enough attention that it deserves and it should be. So, something I wanted to bring up.
When did this happen?
This has been ongoing now for, I believe, about 3 weeks, maybe a month that they've been looking for her, and they finally found her. And it was kind of sad because they weren't getting the kind of responses that they were getting. And I know a lot of people want to blame the Army in general, but now that you find out that the higher ups were, one guy was up there that was involved in it. So I could see why they got the kind of runaround. It might not have been getting to the right channels. Regardless, there's problems for sure.
What else are we going to talk about? You want to talk about
whatever you want.
The cult we joined?
The cult.
I'm just kidding. I always mess around and say that. I actually really so we did MITT together.
Yes, we did.
Right.
Yes, we did.
And I'm absolutely, I love the fact that I did it.
I do too. I love the fact that I did
just for the fact that I met you.
Yeah.
Everything else was
here.
terrible.
Yeah.
No. But no, it was great. And I don't know if I told you, but Mandy, coincidentally, after
she did the not the same thing, but another similar one in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've, it's funny. I know a lot of people in the area that have done the other ones that are kind of it's interesting how they kind of all operate, but it's all the same stuff
for the most part.
It's I'm sure every company's different, but it's all the same exercises and all that. But I can definitely see a huge change in people when they come out of self-development training.
100%. And being able to just take stock of yourself and how you show up in real world leadership roles, right? Whether you created them for yourself or not.
Yeah.
Just to watch that happen and the idea of you slowly dwindling into the reality of who you are, right?
Yeah.
But then you get the opportunity to rebuild it and make it what you want it to be, which is amazing. And then just speaking from a couple's environment, Estelle ended up, doing it, and it's helped our marriage, our relationship immensely because we're on that level where we can speak the same language. So we have very few arguments and more discussions, and they're very respectful. So I super appreciate that part of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And working through things together as adults, treating each other with respect is amazing. So
yeah. and it also makes you more empathetic, and I think just loving in general.
I think so.
To just strangers.
Yeah, you're right.
Like it humanizes people, and I think we need more and more of that. I wish that there was more of the self-development trainings like built into our education system.
I wish there were. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things I wish happened in the education system. There are a lot of things that we don't teach students, and sometimes
that we really should. Right.
Yeah, I mean, like just balance a checkbook. How about start there? Let's start there.
Right.
Yeah, and then, but education shouldn't just be about tests. It should be about developing good, developing healthy, strong people that have a sense of worth and identity, right?
Yeah.
So, but I love it when those in the trainings you see a huge spectrum of people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, people that are like at the top of their professional career,
right?
And then you have people. I mean, we had one kid who was like just out of high school.
Yep.
I forgot his name, but he ended up having everybody ended up having to pay for him to do it.
Michael.
Yeah. And you just see like this huge development.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, and
it's a lot of fun.
And it is a lot of fun. I thought it was a lot of fun. So, yeah, I really do wish there was Adam too that I can kind of speak to it, because I was fortunate enough to go to Don Bosco Tech, which is a private school, which is different now too, because I remember, and this says a lot about a high school, and maybe this is the privilege talking, but I had to take like an all-day test to get into that school.
Yeah.
I showed up at 8 a.m. and my parents picked me up at 4. It was all day. And that was just to be accepted. So you couldn't just pay to get in. You had to qualify to get in, right? You had to pass your testing. And surprisingly enough, out of that school that I went to in the projects, there was a white teacher that really took stock in me. I'll never forget his name, Mr. Bowman. And he was like, hey, I called a special meeting with my parents to tell my parents he felt that I should go to this school and not end up going to any of these other schools like these other kids, because he felt that I showed real potential. Which was, it did wonders for I'd never had that, so it changed my whole life when I felt someone else, besides my parents, who I thought, have to tell you they love you and you're smart, so it did wonders. When you
realized you really liked when people would,
acknowledge me,
your greatness, acknowledge your greatness.
No, but it just felt good. I think it's a good feeling when you have someone kind of acknowledge like, hey, this kid's doing something good, you should put him here. And thank God my parents listened, and they did. And a lot of the friendships and friends that I have that have gone there, we've done something with it, because the school was a regular school. You got there at 7, you did your normal classes, and then from 2:30 until I think it was 3:30 or 4, you took a technology, which I ended up taking construction and design, which is what I surprisingly do now, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people they offered automotives, graphic design, metallurgy, or what is it, material science, electronics, and so you go into whatever trade, and I think in your first year you get to pick 4 that you're interested in. You go to each one, you spend a certain amount of time in it, and then for the next 3 years you just spend your time in there. And if you do an extra year after the 4 years you're there, you'll get your associates of science in that field.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was like, dude, that's amazing. That's like, I don't know why we haven't set up a curriculum similar.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it hasn't been, our football team sucked. I will say that.
Yeah, it sounds like, that's what I was going to say.
You get a lot of, we
we're very heavy on the
hey,
athletics.
We were good though on cross country and water polo, which I played in. So.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, take that for whatever it is.
Whatever it means. I don't know. I can't say that I brought greatness to the team, because I definitely wasn't the best at either. But yeah, I did a lot better when I was there.
Right. But I think just having people, it goes back to what we were saying about like mentorship, right?
Right.
So the idea behind even like the developmental training that we did, it was people really listening, and then giving you the space to express yourself.
Right.
Simple.
Yeah.
So simple, and having some tools to kind of bring it out of you a little bit.
Right.
And it's just so cool, like from like a sociology, like social experiment, man. Like when you really like think back on it, like it's so interesting. Like the possibilities of those trainings with like such a diverse group of people is endless when you're doing those types of experiential learning. It's just as a spectator. So like even like going back and coaching, or going back and just like staffing, it's just phenomenal, man. It really is like, it's just human behavior, just like unleashed.
When I went back and I seniored, did you ever go back and senior?
I staffed a basic, I believe. It's been so long.
Oh, like one of the easy ones, right? Like a 3-day thing. You did like a 3-day, like just for 3 days.
Yeah, non-committal.
No, I'm just kidding.
Very busy.
No, I'm kidding. But no, going back and senioring a full class and putting in the 4 months long process, like I didn't realize how much I missed, because when you're involved, so much is happening, right?
Yeah.
So when you're now behind the curtain and you're getting involved in it, I was like, wow, these are amazing. Like all these skills and all these things that you get to learn, and then being there, you get a lot out of it too, because as you're staffing, you're getting the inside of what it means, and you get a chance to debrief a little with everyone. So I don't know, I found it immensely important, and I wish there was more avenues that people could, be involved in these things. And also the other side of it was it really taught us to give back, to give back to your community, be a part of your community. You take care of, if homeless is your thing, and then what did we do? We built or helped build a school for disenfranchised youth, right?
Yeah.
And so being a part of that and working with them, and then I don't know, I kind of hope that they're watching just people who they don't even know coming in and really taking stock in them and saying, look, we're gonna rebuild your school for you because we believe in you.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it made a change,
Well,
an impact.
I think of when I went into the basic trainers from Cesar Calderon, who was really, he was like my angel, right?
Yeah,
so he was, and that was a huge thing for me.
Right.
Just the fact that he was so interested in seeing people grow and seeing people step into their potential. And that's what he told me when he first met me. He's like, you have a lot of potential. You just got to step into it.
Right.
Like you're the only one in your way. He's like, but you got to put yourself in a position to grow. And I was like, this salesman's good. Dude, he's good. He's good. Yeah. And I'll be honest, like that was and that's something I learned about myself. I'm always looking for the salesman because I don't want to be sold. Right. I don't want to be made a fool of. Right. So if I feel like I'm being sold, I will close off, and I'm not even open to anything.
Where does that come from, Brad?
Well, I'll tell you.
No, but it's true, right? Like we have those things and they come from somewhere, and that's a good thing that I learned out of that, is being able to recognize it and get past it for, things that are going to benefit you.
Yeah. And that's something that I thought was happening. And then he was like, no, I'm going to pay for you to go, but you were going to pay for the next training. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not going to go to the next training. I'm not going to pay for it. I had no money. I had zero money.
Yeah.
I had negative in my bank account.
Same here.
And then I did the basic training, and I realized the value of investing in myself, and I found the money for the advanced.
Let me tell you, wasn't that the hardest part to, like, you're here trying to help people and you want them to experience it, but it was such a difficult thing to get people to really see their self-worth and realize that it's important to invest in yourself. Yeah. So they're looking at the price and they're not realizing, but this is for you. This is going to help you grow. This is going to give you technique. And people are just like, no. And I'm like, well, have you ever done something where you focus on yourself and bettering yourself and taking like leadership training and learning things? And they're like, no, but it's just not for me right now. Yeah. How could that not be for you? And I couldn't help but get a little more involved in it. Yeah, and especially for people you care about, because you're like, hey, I really seen you taking off, and they're thinking that I'm coming to them because I'm telling them they're broken, but the reality is I'm like, dude, you're so, like, I could see so many things open up for you and you take off to this next level. But and
honestly, that's the only, and again, I think people kind of come at it with like, what's in it for you? What are you doing? Like, you're getting like a cut of this, and it creates distrust. But then, the only thing I get out of like people when they do decide to do a training is I like seeing like what's possible for them or what they do with it,
right.
What changes they're going to make in it. 'Cause that inspires me. It's just like watching people chase their dreams or follow their ambition.
Right.
That calls me to a bigger game too. And it makes me want to keep up in it. And it's a positive thing. And it just creates more momentum for everybody.
It does, man.
So, you want to do it again? We should start over.
Yeah.
We're both pretty broken. We just go right back. It's like a board game. You start back at square one.
Stella and I have been talking about doing the one in San Diego.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to kind of go back and check it out and kind of refocus on like what we want to do.
Would you do do they have like a special training, or is it like a basic advanced?
It's basically a couple that did MITT here in LA, broke off and decided to do their own thing in San Diego because they live in San Diego.
Okay.
So we've been really interested in it, and we've gone to one graduation now. So we're just like, hey, we might want to look at it and kind of, doing something 20 years ago, or what was it, 15 years? I don't know. No, maybe just
when we did it.
Yeah.
I turned 21 on our graduation day.
So
12 years ago.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of growth.
12 years ago,
Yeah.
you and I were in advanced last week, the final weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And I'm pretty sure you got 50% of a torch. It's cool, but where else does that show up for you? Where you're okay with splitting?
Well, I'm pretty sure that my closest friends in that group sort of
I remember. I was so mad
voted
at
against me and really didn't tap into their haterness and kind of threw me under the bus.
What was my argument?
Without getting into too much detail, I think you just felt that I didn't earn it.
Really?
Yeah. But
so who did I vote for?
Yourself.
Oh, yeah. That makes perfect sense. I did. And I think I was the only one.
Yeah, well, you enrolled a few people to kind of take back some votes.
Oh, sweet.
So, yeah.
Oh, man.
But you know what? It was good. And it happened and I
Dude, that shows up everywhere in my life.
It shows up everywhere in my life, though. And it does, right? And it's so weird that these aren't really coincidences where it's like, hey, what am I doing wrong that I've kind of self-sabotaged? Like everything in writing was I was supposed to get this thing and be recognized as the leader of the group.
All you had to do is enroll me. If I felt like we were on the same team through that last weekend, you would have had my votes.
I understand, but you know what? And I'm kind of, to my detriment, I kind of went out and I kind of crucified myself for some things I felt that I was out of integrity about, and I think that made it harder for people to swallow because I was like admitting, I'm like, hey, I'm not perfect.
It's all coming back. Yeah.
So I came out and I said, I know none of you know this, but I'm not perfect and this happened, so I let you guys know. And everyone was like, oh, and I'm like, well, so is this guy, this guy too, but it was just, I don't know if it was that same scenario that I was talking about, like a Democrat and Republican. People were like, dude, you were our guy.
Yeah.
And you were out of character. Like we looked up to you. And then
I played the libertarian card. I was like, well, all right, now I'm going to come in the middle and I'm just going to steal votes and make it all worse.
But you know what? It worked out the way it was supposed to. It was a good thing. And I still enjoyed every moment of it. And yeah, it was a good experience. I can't say that it was anything that, it was cool. It was fun. I'm glad it worked out that way. I wouldn't go back and change it.
Yeah.
No, I kind of liked it. Yeah. Even the bad stuff.
No, it was really good.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know. I couldn't imagine doing something like that again.
Right.
Not right now.
Right.
But
there's never a perfect time, though.
Right. See, yeah. But it is something it's going to be very interesting when I do, because I will. Yeah. I just know myself, like I will. And it'll be interesting to see like what different experience I have, because when I did it the first time,
right,
it was through these like really naive eyes. Right. I was just turning 21. Yeah. Like I was like I didn't know up and down, I'd really know very limited life experiences. And I was seeing everybody through this, everybody was an adult with very few exceptions. And I felt very, like I was in the wrong place. And then, but that was part of like stepping into my potential of like realizing despite, my age, I'm at the same table and I'm allowed to speak as peers,
Right.
even if I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. So anyway, it'll be interesting doing it from the other side.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the naive part was what made it possible to kind of, for me, like go in there and be like, I'm going after it. Because I was so naive. I had no idea. It was just, to me, it was like, I crush everything I do. I'm a ranger. I've been combat, and I thought like, I'm going to go in there and dominate. That didn't go over well. We all saw that. That did not go over well. So it'd be interesting now to see that, life has really humbled me. I've seen more, more experience, or at least I want for now, more so than I was then, so, and that's kind of an important thing too, which is why it'd be good for people kind of to experience that, because it's like these people that are rioting or out in the streets or have these really insane progressive ideas, it's like, man, you're going to get older, and some of you, not all of you, are going to look back and be like, wow, I had no idea like what the heck I was talking about, or what I was doing, or how spiteful I was being, or how vengeful.
But even though a lot of what we were learning was very, I mean, when you think of, I just think of like when my dad came to the graduation,
mm-hmm.
and he's a former Marine,
mm-hmm.
and we were doing like the, LP 70 Team World
mm-hmm.
thing, and we were doing like the John Lennon song,
mm-hmm.
and it had a very, like a globalist kind of
right,
culty feeling.
And it did.
Yeah.
I will agree, but I think it's because from the outside it probably looked like globalization, but what we were really talking about and what we're really about is like, we need to come together as a world.
It's more like humanization rather
than
than
humanization, pretty much. And we're like, hey, we can all be different, but we should come together and recognize each other and see the humanity in all of ourselves, and that could only do great things for us as a whole, right?
Yeah.
So it was just tough to explain it when you're only given like a sentence. You only can write it out in a sentence, put it out there in so many words,
Right.
So yeah, it's tough, and I get that. Coming in there from the outside and not having any idea what it is, it doesn't work for people.
But at the end of the day, I mean, it just, regardless of like what it looked like at one point, my dad still will like mention like, oh, well, that training you did really helped you out. I mean, like you can acknowledge the benefit even if you're just like,
but it's not for me though. But
it's not for me. Hey, great for you.
Great for you.
It's great for you. I'm glad it worked out for you.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and and I literally had people say that too when I was doing it. They're like, oh, well, you're a ranger, you can do that kind of stuff, and I'm like, no, every regular people are in there like, not for me, but for you. And I'm going, gosh, this is so for you, like it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Spend some time thinking, in an environment, thinking about yourself, thinking about things, but
it's difficult. Dude, thank you so much for coming in.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, man. And again, congratulations on your next journey.
Thank you.
I'm all here. Whatever you need, let me know. I want to help as much as I can.
And we'll do this again too. Dude, if I have to have podcasts every time just to get you to come up here, I'll do it.
Yeah, well, don't threaten me with a good time. I'll come down.
I've heard you say that before about something else.
Well, I think it works.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Later.
All right, man. Good stuff.
It's my outro.